Hello. Now we are moving to the Marshall, Roy Lopez Marshall. So the idea is that black castles instead of playing d6, and if white is playing c3, which is the most popular move, at least used to be, now already I'm not that sure, then black is playing d5. And this will be the subject of the lesson. And the next one, I will show you all the possible logical attempts for white to avoid this Marshall Gambit. There are some ideas. White can play a4, maybe the main move. If white wants to avoid it, then there is h3, d4, etc. But first, of course, if white would definitely like just to play c3, and in case of d6, that will transpose to the subject of our previous lesson. h3 is the main move, or d4, and as you could see, things are not easy for black there, so white definitely has chances to get an opening advantage. Therefore, yes, but after d5, well, first it was invented by American chess player Marshall, who was one of the top players at that time with a very aggressive style. I think more than a century ago already, about a century ago, and he played it first time against Capablanca, the third world champion, and got crushed. Actually, it was his preparation, his big novelty. He said then later that he had analyzed it and prepared it and waited for the right moment to play against very strong players. So against Capablanca he played it, and then so his idea was in this position he had played knight f6. That was his idea, then followed by bishop d6, knight g4, and very quick and violent attack, which was refuted by Jose Raul Capablanca, of course, a genius of chess, over the board. And actually what he played, then computers found also, I think, another way how white can be better again after knight f6. But actually what Capablanca played was perfectly good, so he won a game. He won this game. Yeah, then for quite a while this Gambit was not popular because of that game. It was considered to be not good enough. But well, later people realized that in this position there are other moves like bishop b7 and especially c6, which I'm going to investigate in great detail now. But first, let's check after d5 if, well, there is only one, I think, well, interesting way for white to play if he doesn't want to take the pawn. Then there is a move d4. You have to know, I mean, if you are black, you have to know what to do against it, and it's possible to try it also with white. Of course, black can play knight takes e4, for instance, d5. It's some kind of strange bishop e6, some strange version of open Roy Lopez. I don't know, it's maybe not so clear, but still probably playable for white. Same goes for ed4, probably e5, knight e4, cd4. Some, I think black's best is bishop f5, and maybe it's okay for black, but definitely playable. The problem of d4 is that actually d4 is practically a forced draw. Like in most of the lines, if not all lines of Marshall nowadays, the game is pretty straightforward, and after c3 d5, and here as in other lines, well, there was quite a lot of practice and of course computer games, and it seems that there is nothing to catch anymore for white. Even though maybe if you are white and you think that your opponent is not so familiar with the side lines of Marshall, you can try this line, because black needs to know some theory here. So takes, all this is forced, bishop takes d1, knight d7. Actually knight d5 is not played, but it might also give black enough compensation for the pawn. Rook e4, bishop f5, rook e1, rook e8, then trying to attack the pawn on e5. computers are pretty optimistic here for black. I mean, of course, it's still white who is fighting for something, but according to computers, maybe it might be enough for equality for black. But knight d7 is much more direct. And now, well, there is a choice for white. One is bishop c2, possible move. Knight takes c5. Well, in fact, bishop b7 might also be enough for equality, but knight takes c5 is a very direct way, and there was some games of strong players already here, which were ending in a draw. Also, a lot of games of computers. So it's pretty forced, the play here. If white wants to fight for something, then this bishop f4, bishop d6, and now the most principal way is to take on e5, take on h7. It looks like white is just pawn up, but he's just not in time to get, to get out with his knight comfortably, and black is just by force actually equalizing here, making a draw even, I would say, practically a forced draw. f6, rook e3 is usually played, rook d1 check, rook e1 takes, bishop f5. A strange position, because looks like white is simply pawn up, but because of those checks and bad development, I mean, it's actually a forced draw. Knight e3, rook e8 check. If king f1, bishop d3 check comes, and rook e2, so king d2 is played, rook d8, and white cannot really avoid a perpetual check on the d and e line. So this variation seems to lead to a draw. And rook takes c4 is something quite similar. Knight c5 comes, rook d4. Maybe actually bishop f5 also here is okay for black, but much more direct is knight e6. And now white can choose whether to play rook d5, bishop b7, rook d7, and now both, I think, rook f8. For some reason, computers slightly prefer rook a8. I don't know why. Bishop e3, bishop c5, or rook f8, bishop e3, bishop c5. Then it seems like it's practically a forced draw here. And otherwise, rook d2 is another move. And now, again, bishop b7 might be actually enough for equality, but bishop g5 is very direct. Rook c2, takes, knight f4. Very forced play, as most of the lines, again, of Marshall nowadays. And it seems that white actually cannot manage to hold the pawn. Rook d1, knight g6, and black takes the pawn on e5, and with a very drawish position. So I think that d4, well, I mean, again, knight takes e4, e4 might also be okay for black. I don't know, but d4 seems like a forced draw practically. So it's actually disappeared from the tournament practice, at least of the top players, because everybody knows the theory and knows all those lines. Nothing to catch for white anymore. Just maybe, as I mentioned already, just to check if you think that your opponent might not know the sidelines of Marshall, maybe then you can try to check and try your luck that he will start to think after d4 that it will be the first time he sees it, this move on the board. But if not, then probably it will be just a draw after d4. So e takes d5, knight takes d5. Well, white has some moves like d3 here, but obviously this is not this cannot be serious. I mean, in the sense of fighting for advantage. So knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook takes e5. And as I mentioned already, knight f6 is not enough. I just want to mention that there is e4 move, but it doesn't work. DC and ef, and now d4 is much better for white, almost winning. Even g3 also is strong. So this is not recommended to play e4. Knight takes d5, so takes, and by far the best move is c6 here. Even though bishop b7 actually is not too bad. I mean, I think white keeps some advantage here, but it might be also playable. There is no point actually to play it because c6 is doing very well, but still, just for your knowledge, d4, bishop f6, rook e1, rook e8, knight d2, and then black is trying to get c5 somehow, knight f4, some jumps, but not enough for equality according to the theory. c6, yeah, so this is a classical position of this gambit. Actually, yeah, it looks a bit strange because seems like black just gave a pawn. Okay, white is lacking development a bit, but he doesn't need so many tempests, just d4, knight d2, knight f3, and he will be just a healthy central pawn up. But yes, well, it's this position was played a lot, and the worst is that there were a lot of computer games, and it's I would say that it's a little bit sad to me because actually it's extremely interesting variation, and there were a lot of theoretical battles before computers appeared. Things were not easy. Some novelties were found, and then some improvements for black, how to fight against this novelty. So there was a lot of life in this very interesting opening variation, which is now practically dead, in my opinion, because well, yeah, just for your information, you know, all the top players nowadays, they have, on top of the database of human games, we all have database of computer games as well. And I just checked 2-3 years ago, somehow started to be interested in what is going on now in Marshall. And I checked my computer base and tried to guess how many games on this particular position I found in the computer database. More than 230,000. If you can imagine, just imagine it. Of course, since the position is complicated, but still black is pawn down, so it's sort of direct also. Well, black cannot just make some waiting moves. So can you imagine 230,000 computer games on this position? So and I started to look at it, and I understood that there is no more play actually. I mean, all you need is to learn variations, to memorize them, and okay, to check with engines also. But I actually well, don't believe that it's possible to find anything really new anymore in this Marshall, and this is a bit sad to me because well, it's one of those drawbacks of nowadays computer era. There are lots of pluses, but this is a minus, that it's a bit, you know, limiting our game in some way. And at least on the professional level, of course, I'm talking about it. And I think that, well, there is just nothing for white, actually. I will be extremely surprised if this assessment will ever change, because again, there are so many games, you know, every single move, even a strange looking move, you always can find like 1,000 of computer games on it in this variation. So but we will see. I mean, I think that nowadays it's becoming well, white players are going on again, we are talking about the top grandmaster level, are going less and less often here. I mean, from time to time, some players go just to check the memory, just as a surprise weapon. But most of the time, actually, the games on the top level end in a draw, and most of the time, 2/3 at least of the game is actually according to the theory going, and then maybe white makes a small improvement in a slightly better but drawish endgame, and finally, you know, it ends in a draw. So that is the usual scenario here. But again, from if you want to play it with black, perfectly recommended, because actually what is also a bit unpleasant from the white side here, that in all the lines, all the main theoretical lines in this system, actually black is, you know, if he knows well, if he remembers all the lines and all the variations, then he almost makes a forced draw, in fact. But on the way, there are a lot of different options which are maybe objectively not good enough for equality. But since black has some initiative and some compensation for the pawn, it's a bit easier to play with black. So playing it with white, it's it's a little sad, nowadays, because first of all, it's difficult to find any advantage against the main lines, and your opponent can always choose some side move, which is still playable, and you will have to solve some problems over the board, because as you will see, black has quite a number of options besides the main very well established lines. But again, from time to time you can play it, and of course you need to hear actually the knowledge of concrete lines, and actually the memory is becoming a very important factor in this variation. That's all I'm talking about the professional level chess, when people are very well prepared and know all the theory from A to Z. If you are talking about club level or especially amateur level, of course, I don't expect players of, let's say, 2000 level to know all the theory here. And then if you're better prepared, of course, you have serious chances to win, even to win practically a game out of the opening here with each color, in fact. So from the black side, again, very recommended to play it. I think it's not only objectively sound, but also it's quite nice to play. Black has easy play, initiative, and even in case something goes a little bit wrong, you forgot some line, black always has some play in this position. But better not to forget. If you're playing black, better you remember it well. Let's go. Let's try to see what are the. I will not, of course, manage to show you every single line here, but the main attempts for white to play for advantage and how black should react against it. This I'm going to show you, and then of course you will need to make a bit of more work if you are playing on professional level to study all the sidelines, but I can assure you that there are no sidelines which are extremely dangerous for black. So that is just a matter of time, a bit of work, and memorization, nothing else. So here the old main line was d4, which is very logical, of course, to put the pawn on d4 immediately. Nowadays, again on the top level, grandmaster level, almost everybody is playing d3. I will explain you the difference. It's not obvious at all. It's not, in fact, I think it will be interesting for you to understand actually the reason of why d3 makes some difference compared to d4 and where is this difference. But let's first start with d4. Bishop d6 is played, rook e1, logical, queen h4, g3, queen h3. Okay, those moves are very logical, and now white has a different choice of moves. Of course, it needs to be extremely careful. So one thing for sure, never ever go to this position if you are white. Without a good preparation, you can lose it very quickly, because black has a lot of tactical tricks in this position. The main line, I would say, is bishop e3, but one of the serious moves is rook e4. Actually, a very serious move, because white wants to put rook h4 to get rid of this queen, then sometimes even queen h5. And what is extremely important here is that black has a g5 resource. And now you see the difference. Actually, the difference is that if the pawn would have been on d3, bishop d6, rook e1, queen h4, g3, queen h3. Now rook e4 is already a strong move, actually, and still not totally clear if it gives white an advantage, but it's already very serious, because g5 doesn't work already. Bishop takes g5, and after queen f5, the rook is not hanging on e4. So here, and here after rook e4, g5, of course, bishop takes g5 is not working, because queen f5 is a double attack. That's why, and black actually preparing on top of everything f5, f4, very dangerous attack can come. So queen f1 is the best move, And here probably queen h5. That's what I would recommend you. Not totally sure if queen takes f1, bishop f5. Let's say knight d2, bishop c7. There were some games white is playing a4, black plays g4, a strange game. But it's clear that it's only white who can pretend to be a bit better here, even though maybe black has enough here, enough compensation for the pawn. In general, this is a type of game that, on top of the fact that black has some initiative and some threats on the king, but yeah, in fact, especially when white has a pawn on d4, quite often black has, well, just a kind of positional compensation here. Just because of more active pieces, white still needs to develop his flank. And yeah, sometimes even I see computers nowadays are playing in a kind of positional manner and having pretty decent statistics, even not trying to play direct lines, which, by the way, are working pretty well for black. But even some playing at some point, I was very surprised if computers were playing a5, a4, and just having enough or almost enough compensation. So here, queen f1, queen h5, knight d2, and there is a move f5 here, but I'm not sure it's working so well. I mean, of course, also quite dangerous. You need to know what to do against it. Bishop f5 is the most logical move. In fact, also computers, what I've just mentioned, also started to play like this: bishop h3, queen e2, queen g6, knight f3, and simply f6, followed by king h8 or king g7. With quite a decent statistics, I think close to 50% statistics. So it might also be just that black has enough positional compensation here. But there is a direct way of playing. Also bishop f5, f3 now. That is a white's idea. And of course, taking on e4, white has at least enough compensation. In fact, more than enough. But knight f6 is the main move in this position, even though maybe rook e8 in fact is also good enough for equality. So these lines, I'm just showing you the directions. Of course, you need to check it with engines to see the theory. So there are lots of different options. In fact, black has much bigger choice than white most of the times in Marshall. But what is important, I believe, that I give you the correct directions and of the main lines, which are supposed to be the best, at least according to the nowadays theory, and then you can check the rest. So knight f6, and now the main line goes queen g2, queen g6, and then rook e3 white is playing, and I think both knight d5 actually is okay, probably rook e8 is also fine. I think it leads to almost a forced draw in this position. So rook e4 it seems that after g5 is very important to know this move. But here black actually has quite a choice, in fact, of different options. So not extremely promising for white, I mean, to play it with white. Another idea is queen e2, is to try to get the queen to f1 quickly, you know, queen, bishop g4, queen f1. Again, actually rook e8 might be also enough. Takes, bishop d2, bishop f5, and I think it's probably enough for equality also, because of course if white manages to develop his knight in a decent position, he will be better, but it's quite difficult to arrange this. But queen h5 is simpler, in my opinion. Queen h5, knight d2, rook e8, f3. Of course, again, white's position is very dangerous. Yeah, you really need to know what you are doing, because white has no development. But so the main idea is here to play f3 and to try to jump out at some point with a knight to e4. But first of all, even this takes on f3 is maybe a little bit more comfortable for white. At least he managed to develop and having two bishops, but I suspect it's also nothing really. It should be a draw. Black also has another option, is to play bishop h3, queen f2, takes, and c5 is a very straightforward move. But again, as I mentioned earlier, that even the move like a5, computers are playing here, just trying to play a4 and having a perfectly good statistics with black. So I mean, c5 as well is probably equalizing. So all in all, seems like those lines are not extremely promising nowadays, because black has quite a choice and seems to be doing okay in more than one way. So bishop e3 is the main line. Yes, and now, of course, bishop g4 was always like an automatic move here, and of course it's very logical. But all of a sudden I realized that few computer games on bishop e6. I mean, few, like 1,000, yeah, so not too many. On bishop g4, I think there are 200,000 games, more or less, maybe 150, but something like that. But bishop e6, still some good 1,000 games. And actually, it's also, I mean, at least it has like 50% statistics. I don't know if it's good enough to equalize and what's the point of this move, why it is good, but for some reason, for instance, queen f3 is the main move in computer games, and then just a5, a4. So playing very slow, like for compensation. I'm not sure. Looks strange. I'm not sure it's completely enough for equality, and there is no reason, because bishop g4 is doing perfectly fine. But just to show you that, black has options. Black can also try in a practical game, at least, to find some other ways of playing, and over the board it might be not easy to fight with black's initiative for a human here. But bishop g4 is good. Queen d3, rook a8, knight d2, rook e6. Okay, kind of a K position here, and the main theoretical move is a4. Then queen h5 is the best move according to theory, AB, and practically all legal moves were played here, already tried, and black has enough here. Black has enough compensation. It seems to be like dynamic equality, or if you study it very carefully with engines, maybe you can also say that it's a forced draw. It's possible. Because I think on this position solely, maybe there are like 100,000 games. I guess good enough, to have a clear opinion about the assessment. But I think I found some idea, maybe 10 years ago, or even more, maybe more 15 years ago, I played the rapid chess against Levon Aranyan, and this is tricky idea, and I managed to win the game because Levon didn't know it. But now, of course, it's also already sterilized. So the idea is to play queen f1, queen h5, and now f3. Looks like a blunder simply, but in fact it's not. So the point is that, in case of taking on e3, which is the main line, white is just playing queen f2. Of course, to say that I found it, it's a bit of an exaggeration. Obviously, I needed a bit of help of engines. But it actually has some venom, because if rook f6 is one of the ideas, then queen g2, I think here white is slightly better. For instance, bishop h3, queen f2, bishop f5, a4, complicated position. Of course, black has his play, but maybe it's objectively in white's favor. So then probably what is black's best is he has two ways of playing: rook takes e3 or knight takes e3. I believe knight takes e3 is a little bit more accurate. Still, rook e3 should be enough, probably for a draw. Takes, queen f2, knight d5, with the idea if rook e1, then knight f6, followed by queen d7. Okay, white has a bit of, more comfortable position because of the white square bishop, but nothing dramatic. Yeah, so queen f3, for instance, here takes at this endgame, but then it's already probably better to play knight takes e3, because black can get to the same endgame here, even in a slightly better version. So knight takes e3, queen f2, knight d5, very direct play. Fg, queen g4, the only way for white here to fight for something is to play queen f3. And, this endgame after queen takes f3 is a little bit more pleasant for white, yeah? Or maybe more accurate to say it was before computers played another, 500 games on this endgame and actually found a way after rook e1, a5. They found that a5 is a very accurate move, and it works again tactically, as always. I mean, the point that it's very important for black to push the pawn on a4. And let's say a4 takes c5 seems to be enough for a draw. Or knight e5, a4, a very important move. And after takes knight d7, rook d8, knight b6, white taking the pawn on d5, but black is in time to take on g3, rook d5, and this endgame was played not so much, maybe another 30 games on this rook endgame, and it's drawish. It's a draw, it seems so. But also on queen f3, there is a queen g6 move. It seems to be also good enough for equality. Rook e6, f e6. Now if queen a4, bishop takes g3 works. Don't ask me why, but it works. And queen g6, for instance, bishop f2 check, very important. King g2, hg, knight f3, and now another, probably the most precise move is g5. Again, everything already played many times by engines, and it seems to be a draw. Same goes for queen g2. I mean, here, yes, white, if he manages to get rook e1, knight e4, of course, he will have quite an unpleasant pressure, but a5, again, don't ask me why it's so important to get a4, a3, a4, bishop h2, h5 now, h4, and again, another 50 games on this position, engine games, and it seems to also that it's enough to equalize. But, okay, sorry to bother you here with all those forcing lines and all those computer games, but that is the nature of this opening. I mean, here you just need to know exactly move per move, to check computer games, to check the suggestions of the engines, and to memorize it all. You don't need too much of a strategical understanding or you know, prophylactic thinking. So you just need to memorize, and then the 80% of your job is done, of your success, wherever you're playing white or black. That's why learning all those variations, and remember, there are many long lines, you need to remember them, but basically, again, as I mentioned already, it's practically sterilized. I don't think there is any way for white to get any real chances for advantage. So that's why d4, you see, it's... and by the way, yeah, I forgot to mention that on the way, black has quite a number of options as well. It's not the only way of playing. There are some ideas like f5 at some point, f4, g5, some very tactical ideas. I'm not sure it works, but what I mean that it's black who is choosing which line he plays very often here. Yeah, so white has to if you want to play it with white, on top of the fact that it's objectively probably nothing, but also you need to learn quite a lot of other lines, other options for black. So that's why this d4 is not that popular nowadays. So d3 is mainly played now. Yeah, this move is rather safe. I mean, there are some ideas for black how he can play, so to say, for a win, for complicated position, but I'm not sure they're objectively sound enough for equality. So bishop d6 is the main move, rook e1 now, and as I've mentioned already, the big difference is that after queen h4, g3, queen h3, white has rook e4 move. Even though it is not so clear, black has two options. One is to play queen f5, knight d2, queen g6. And by the way, recently, I think there was a game, rather recently, maybe a year ago, Vashiela Graf Anton, I think, from on this line, knight f3, I think Vashier played bishop g4, and then, if I remember correctly, he gave back the pawn, played knight h4, followed by queen h5, and had some pressure. Finally, it ended in a draw, but he had some pressure. So maybe queen f5 is playable, but again, if white knows here what he is doing, probably it will not really give you any chances to play for a win with black. So then already better to make a draw according to the theory. But maybe what I can recommend you, I mean, if you're playing black and you want to play, you don't want to go for the main line, which is actually just fighting for a draw and achieving it. That is a good thing, but without any real winning chances. So maybe queen d7, it's slightly forgotten line, knight d2, bishop b7, just to play for compensation. Let's say rook e1 is c5, knight e4, bishop e7, and then trying to play king h8 and f5 maybe. I think computers are, prefer white here slightly, but it's a game. It's a game. At least this is maybe the only chance, in my opinion, for black to to have a complicated game and to try to play for a win in this d3 variation. I just noticed that, strangely enough, again, there's some good few hundred games on queen c7 move. Computer games. Queen c7, g3, bishop f5. Looks extremely strange, but at least in my database, also statistics is quite okay for black. Maybe a little bit below 50%, but still quite okay. But that's also not really playing for a win, because white, for instance, can play knight d2, takes on d3, I don't know, knight f3 or knight e4. I think something like this, bishop g6, knight h4, then takes the bishop, two bishops, but black is active, probably just enough play for equality. But yeah, it's not playing for a win, queen c7, but even this strange move is not easy to refute. But the main line is bishop f5. Actually, simply trying to develop the bishop and trying to stop white from developing himself. Knight d2, very important that it's knight d2. This variation is important to know, that black has knight f4 here, and in case of knight e4, knight takes d3 is possible, and this leads to massive exchanges and draw. And in case of d4, knight takes g2 works. That is important. King g2, queen h4, knight f1, rook a8, and you can check this position with engines. Well, it's at least enough, at minimum, for a draw. Maybe more. I didn't check it if black has more than a draw, but the draw seems that black has here. So that's why bishop f5, usually queen f3 is the main move, is what is usually played here. And now queen h4. That is considered to be the best move. Queen d7 is not enough to equalize, because it can take in bishop f4. That is very important, and takes, and after bishop d3, knight d2. Of course, if white managed to get his knight to d4 here, he will be just better. There is some strange move, queen f6. I didn't really check it too carefully, because there is no need, because actually the main line seems to be almost sterilized already, and all the best players are playing queen h4 in this position. But there is a rook e8 move, which might also be enough actually for a draw. Very long line, take on e8 takes. Now main move is knight d2, queen e1 check, knight f1, and let's say bishop g6. And here white has many options. g3 can try to take on d5. There is a lot of theory here, but lately somehow it's black is not going to this position. I don't know why. Maybe new engines, they discovered some problems in this line. At my time, when I played and analyzed Marshall, and it was sometime maybe beginning of from 2000 to 2010, in this period of time, this line was considered to be also enough for a draw, but maybe not anymore. I don't know, but what I know that queen h4 is played almost in every game or grandmaster game, and g3, queen h3, and it seems that white is really struggling here to show anything. And by the way, again, I want to mention that if you want to have it in your repertoire, this opening, then you should study first the games of Aranyan, who played it for many years, who is playing Marshall and anti-Marshall, and he's playing lately this line and making draws in factory amounts. So I guess it's actually a draw here. Not a complete draw, but white can still keep the game going, but there is no real advantage here. A very important line, black wants to play rook e8, and so on. So a very important line is here knight d2, of course. You're trying to get knight e4, and this is one of the lines you also need to memorize precisely. Rook e8, knight e4, bishop g4, and now the game gets very direct. Queen g2, takes, f5. Otherwise, of course, if white just gets one tempi, bishop d2 is just pawn up and winning position. But f5, h3, bishop h5, and now bishop f4 is the main move. Bishop takes f4, gf4, takes a takes the piece, takes, and now important resource bishop f3 check. There were many games already only from this position. I mean, king f3, rook f4, king g3, rook e4, takes, and white is trying to play a4 at some point, or f3, rook e2, a4. The series still continues here. It's not the end of the series. I mean, after f3, rook e2, I think white is trying to play c4. By the way, rook e2 is not the only move. There is also a4 ideas, but actually it's already, practically sterilized to a draw. So knight d2, we can conclude that it's almost by force leads to a draw. That's why lately white is trying to play bishop e3 here. And now bishop takes d3. And, taking on d5, actually in these positions, it seems like black simply has enough compensation, long-term compensation for the pawn. So let's say queen f3, bishop c4, one of the ideas, and bishop e6. Okay, what is white's at least a positive point for white, that he gets this very, very nice square on d4 for the bishop. But there were games again here, bishop b8, for instance, queen g2, queen h5, and it seemed that the position is actually equal. So black simply has, because of this white square bishop, this diagonal, black simply plays normally. There is nothing, black is not in a hurry, just playing chess, having two bishops and these white squares in exchange for the pawn. It seems to me that it's objectively equal, and subjectively, I think it's easier to play with black here, because white's skin is potentially a bit weak, so probably not a very prosperous position to play with white. That's why, again, most of top players are playing knight d2 now. And queen f5 is the main theoretical move. I'm not sure if actually white has anything special after bishop f5. In the idea of bishop d4, let's say rook e8. Here it seems to be a slightly better version for white. So white is playing like this, but even lately there was a game, I think Dingley Rand played like this. He went b4 here and practically made a forced draw. Bishop b6, takes, rook d7, it ended in a draw. So maybe bishop f5 is also okay. But the more, the simplest and maybe safer move is queen f5, which is also what Magnus Carlsen played more than once, and other strong players, Aranyan, I remember, I believe also. Bishop d4. And here, white has a little bit more active position. Yeah, so white is trying to play a4, then to get a slightly, maybe very slightly better endgame. But, obviously there were lots of games already of grandmasters on this, in this position. And I checked the statistics lately. It just like 90+% of games end in a draw here. Black is playing rook fd8. I think it's actually okay move, but more popular is rook fe8. For instance, a4. Aranyan likes to play h6 here, likes to make draw with h6. I think Carlsen make couple of draws with king f8 move. But all in all, it's at least what is good for white, that it's safe. White has no risk, but he can still try a little bit, but objectively, of course, it's not enough for anything special. So that is the state of affairs. In Marshall, of course, again, there are some different other options. So it's not all the theory what I've shown you, but I've shown you the major line. So still, I might be missing something, but. Again, here the subject of my course is more trying to explain you the strategical ideas of different opening systems, certain move orders. Here the play is very direct. You all have engines, computers, databases. Just check all the rest of the theory. If you want to play this variation, computers will be much more useful than me in this particular opening system. But again, my opinion that it's if black is very well prepared and remember all the variations, all those long force lines, I think it's practically sterilized. That's why on the top grandmaster level nowadays. White in this position is trying to avoid Marshall and try to play different other systems, which we are going to consider in our next lesson.